Kadosh Bokato Masechet Moed Katan Daf Yomi 581. We're starting on the last line of Daled Amud Bet, where it says "Umetakdin et kilkulei hamayim shebeshut rabim." You're allowed to fix the kilkulei hamayim in reshut rabim, which means that if you've got different paths of water or different things of water, right? For example, you have these stones that fell inside of a pit, so therefore you're allowed to fix it on, right? Whether it's going to be Chol Moed or during Shemitah. So says the Gemara, Chatita im chafira lo. You're only allowed lechatet. You know what lechatet is? Also in modern Hebrew, it's also the same thing. You're allowed to be lechatet. You're not allowed to lachpor. So you can't dig it, but you're allowed to take out the stones and things like that. It's called lechatet. Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yaakov, name him Yochanan, lo shanu lekeshen rabim tzechim lahem. That's only if the majority of the people, meaning there's a lot of people that they don't need it for the moed to drink. Avar rabin tzechim lahem, but if a lot of people they need it, meaning that the multitudes they need it for the moed, afilu chafira mutar, even to dig new ones, right, is going to be permitted. So says the Gemara, rabin tzechim lahem nishari. What behemet? Mamash, people need drinking water, so you're allowed to come and start digging, right, wells or digging pits in order to have drinking water. We learned in a Braita, you're allowed to come and start taking out the stones from borot shichin meorot. Remember the different types of, whether it's ditches, pitches, right? All these different types of forms of pits. Okay, shiliachid. But it says you're not allowed to dig borot shichin meorot shel rabim. So you see from here, legabe chatita, which means clearing a path. You're allowed to do it of a yachid, kal vachomer, rabim. But to do it chafira, you're not allowed to do it of a rabim, kal vachomer, yachid. Chazak v'ruf. So my love be rabim tzechim lahem. We're not talking about the rabim, they need them, and still you're not allowed to do chafira. And so the Gemara lo b'shein rabim tzechim lahem. Not only if they don't need them, meaning if the rabim does not need them, so then you're not allowed to come and you're not allowed to start digging new ones. However, the rabim tzechim lahem, it's going to be permitted. Fine. Tekavatega beyachid. Ask the Gemara, how could you say that? 1 second. When we're talking about the yachid, she'en yachid tzarich lahem. The yachid is talking about where you do not actually need it. So if you do not actually need it, right? So what's the case? Chatita nishare. So then, is it permitted to do chatita? What does that mean? Are you permitted then to come and to do chatita? Chatita means to clear it. Remember? That's the concept of the clearing. Okay? Cleaning out of the stones and things like that. So he says, Vatayim, we learned in a Braita, so it says, when you have borot shechinu me'arot, right, and they belong to a yachid, so you're allowed to put water inside of it during Chol Moed. Aval lo chotetin, you're not allowed to do chatita. Velo shafin et tzidken, you're also not allowed to come and to plaster it, which means you don't fix the plaster on it, right, in order that the water does not go out, which means if you just have a pit, you put water will go through the ground. So what do they used to do? They used to have a pit, they used to plaster it with lime, and now that it's plastered, the water will not go anywhere. It's like a pool, a swimming pool. Why did they have to make the cement? Very simple. If you don't have the cement, the water sips right through, you're not going to have a swimming pool. And then you just continue adding water, and there's nothing there. To do with the rabim, you're allowed lechatet, and you're allowed leshafin tzidken, which means to plaster the line. So therefore, now if you tell me that beforehand we were talking about that you're allowed lechatet of the borot of the yachid, and it's talking about that it was required for the moed, so what are you talking about over here? Here it's mashma, right, that you could only do chatita, and only with chatita, right, is it going to be permitted of rabim, right, but not chafira of rabim. So the Gemara says, ve'ela mai yachid tzarich lahem. Obviously, we're talking about the yachid needs it. So if the yachid needs it, the kavataga berabim, so the rabim needs it. So b'rabim tzrichim lahem, if the rabim need it, chafira miasir, is it asur then lachpor? Right? Why? Because according to what we just said, if we're applying, what we're trying to do is we're trying to apply whatever we spoke about in the first case to the second case. So if the former case was the yachid, and the yachid means shetzarich lahem, so also the second case is, right, rabim, which tzrichim lahem. So if it is that it's tzrichim lahem, so what's the case then? So he says, obviously, so then what? It was only going to be permitted what? The chatita and not chafira. So he says, Tanya, we learned in the Braita. בורות שכין ובורות של יחיד חוצין מים לתוכן וחופין אותם, ולא שפין לצדקיהם, ולא חוטאים לתוכן, ולא סדין אותם בסין, ושל רבים חופרין אותם וסדין אותם בסין. Here you have a Braita מפורשת. The Braita מפורשת is telling you, yeah, the what? You're allowed to do chafira. Yeah, you're allowed to do chafira. So I'm going to share with you the screen, okay, in order. Here it is. Here it is. You see, here it's chatita and chafira. The public pit, if the water is needed, it's going to be mutar and mutar. If the water is not needed, it's mutar and chafira is asur. But a private pit, okay, if the water is needed, it's mutar, chatita, chafira is asur. And if the water is not needed, it's always going to be asur. Okay, so we have it there. Okay, let's continue. So says the Gemara, but rather, right, they had the original question. What was the original question? That it's going to be permitted to come and to start digging the new pits. So Tadi Tachi, so they came and they're going to explain the Braita like this. You're allowed to do chatita. Remember, chatita is cleaning out the stones by a pit of a yachid. When you need them. Then obviously, if it's a rabim, you're allowed to do that. When the rabim need them. Tafilu chafira, but there even chafira is going to be permitted. But you don't do chafira when you don't need it. And if you don't need it, tafilu chatita nami asur. Then even chatita is going to be asur if you do not need it. And that was the chart that I showed you before. Amar Ravashi, Ravashi says, matniti nami daika. It's also the dudes from a Mishnah. Tiktani, because it says in the Braita, osin kol tzorchei rabim, kol le'atu yemai. When it says you're going to do all the tzorchei rabim, what is it coming to include? Kol le'atu ye. What is it coming to include? It's not coming to include that you could even do chafira le'tzorchei rabim. It says kol. Kol means everything, right? Kol means everything. So it means everything should be permitted. It says the Gemara lo le'atu ye the Tanya to include that which was written. Yotzin lekavetz et derachim. They're allowed to go out to take all the kotzim, all the thorns which are on the path. Meaning on the Chol Moed they come and they clean up the area. Why? They don't want people to get hurt. People are going out on Chol Moed, so they don't want. So what do? They come and they take away all the thorns on the streets. They take away all the things. They don't want people to be multakenet rechovot. They fix the roads, and also the holes. And they start measuring all the mikvahs to make sure that there's a proper amount. And any mikveh that does not have 40 seah, margilin letocho. Right? They come and they put inside of it 40 seah. How do we know that if they don't do this, so then how do we know that it's kilu? That then it's incumbent upon the betin that if they didn't do this, they spilled blood. Tamulomar comes to teach you. What does it mean by yalecha damim? It's something incredible. Meaning it's incumbent upon the people of the city to come and to do these things. And if they don't do it, they spilled blood. So imagine if they didn't clean up the thorns, they didn't. So then they get punished for it. You understand? That's the way it is, and it's so important. Nowadays, how things actually change, it's incredible. But that's just the concept of, imagine, it was the city's obligation to come to fix the roads. And if they don't, they have the blood is in their hands. Okay?
They cause them to sin.
Yes, they cause them all these problems. So says the Gemara, we learned Mefurash. Right? We said, we already taught, we already learned the what? Right? He comes and he says like this. He says, that they're going to fix the paths, the roads, the mikvaot, they'll sing kol tzorchei rabim, and they're going to do all tzorchei rabim. What is it coming to include? Lav la'atui chafira. We're not talking about that it's going to come to include chafira, that you're even allowed to come and to, right, dig something new. So he says, Shema Mina comes to teach you that yes, when it says the word kol, it's coming to teach you that everything is considered tzorchei rabim, and therefore even the chafirat of the borot is going to be permitted. Okay, next. Mitzainin et kvarot. So if you remember in the picture book, if you want over there, Abichai, you could show it to everybody. It shows the mitzainin et kvarot. What is mitzainin et kvarot? They're going to start putting plaster on the kvarot in order to show everybody, right, that there's a kever there, and therefore they're not going to come and they're not going to start eating trumot and masrot and all those things around there. Show it to everybody. Okay. Fine. Mitzainin et hakvarot. So you're going to be mitzayin et hakvarot. Amar Shimon Pazi. Says Rabbi Shimon Pazi. Remez et tziyun kivro min Torah. Where is there a remez in the Torah? You have to make a tziyun for the kvarim. Right? Remember, Sharat tziyun is the gates of the tziyun. Tziyun is showing the fuentes, the bases, the roots. So therefore, so to here, a tziyun is a tziyun of a kevet. So how do we know from the Torah there's a remez? You're supposed to do this. So it says in the Gemara, Tamunomar, he saw a bone of human being and he built by it a tziyun. Amale Ravinu Rashi says, Ravinu Rashi, 1 second. This is before Yechezkel came and he said, that means 1 second, before Yechezkel came and he said this pasuk. Who was the one that said it? But this is the pasuk in Yechezkel. So means 1 second. So before Yechezkel, there was no tziyun? There was no tziyun on the planet? So he says, Velitamech, and according to you, Hadam Rav Chassa, that which Rav Chassa says, Avar Zeh, Torah Moshe Rabbeinu lo lamanu. We didn't learn from Torah Moshe, but rather we learned it from. Here we're talking about Kohen, which is an Arel. Even if he didn't have a Brit Milah because of honest, for example, his brothers died, still he's pasul for the Avodah. So it says we didn't learn this from Torah Moshe Rabbeinu, but rather we learned it from Yechezkel ben Buzi. Because it says in the pasuk over there, Kol ben nechar Arel lev ve'Arel basar lo yavo me'mikrashi. So before Yechezkel came, Manamar, who said it? But rather it was Halacha Moshe Misinai. Came Yechezkel and he put it on a pasuk. Hachanami so to the exact same thing. The Gemara Gemira it was Halacha Moshe Misinai that you have to put a tziyun for the kevarim. Came Yechezkel and he put it a pasuk. That means even though it's only written in Yechezkel, we already knew it preceded a long time from Halacha Moshe Misinai. Okay, next. Rabbi Yavu Amar Mehacha. Rabbi Yavu comes and he says, we learned it from over here. It says, "V'tameh tameh yikra." What does that mean? Tum'ah koralo ve'omer lo perosh. The tum'ah is calling out to him. It's like tum'ah is calling. So when the tum'ah is calling out to him, so all of a sudden he realizes and it's telling him, separate, separate, separate. Why? There's tum'ah here. Be careful. You understood? Just like sometimes they say that the walls are screaming out, right? Like a haunted house. It's not because of the walls are screaming that it's haunted. You see it. They make it scary. The same thing, lavdil elef avdalot. The tum'ah is calling out to you. Tumah, separate, stay far away, right? Don't be close. Omer lo perosh, he's telling him segregate yourself. V'chen amar Rabbi Uziel bar bered Rabbi Uziel Rabbah. Says Rabbi Uziel, the son of Rabbi Uziel Rabbah, right? Tumah korelo ve'omer lo perosh. The tumah is calling out to him and telling him separate. So because of that, since the Torah is coming and telling him to separate, it's a pasuk in the Torah. It's not anymore. If you want to call it Halacha Moshe Sinai, or it's another tziyun, it's another place where we see from the Torah that the tum'ah is calling out to you to separate. So therefore, you're obligated to put a tziyun in order to separate. Ask the Gemara. This Tamet Yikra is teaching you that you have to make a tziyun for a kevet. He says, we need it for another pasuk. We need it for another teaching. We learned in a right of Tamet Yikra. Some people, they like to hide everything, and therefore they don't want to say anything. But he's saying the exact opposite. By tzarat, you have to tell everybody about it, right? Somebody has the virus, tell people. Yeah, positive. You have to tell people about it. Don't hide it. Why? It says, why do you have to be modiat tzaro l'rabim? Shrabim vakshim alav rachamim. Because you want that everyone should start praying for you. Which means that the reason why it's saying v'tameh tameh yikra, it's not telling you that perosh from the tum'ah, and therefore you have to make a tziyun around the tum'ah, right? The sign around the tum'ah in order to separate. No, it's coming to teach you the what? He's coming to teach you a very important yesod, that when a person has a tzara, you tell it to the public, so that way they pray for you. And when they're going to pray for you, you're going to come out of that tzara. So that's why you're doing it. So says the Gemara, in Keneso, lichto v'tameh yikra. So say it once. V'tameh yikra. The tameh, the one that's tameh, he should be calling out. My v'tameh tameh yikra. Why does it say twice v'tameh tameh? Shvamina Tarta comes to teach you two different halachot. Number one, the one that has tzara should tell the people in order that they should pray for him. And number two, that the Torah, the tum'ah itself is calling out and saying, Pirosh, separate from me, which is again a hint to tziyun kivarim from the Torah. Abaye Amar Me'acha. Abaye says there's another pasuk. The other pasuk is Lifnei velo titen mikshol. What does that mean? That means you have to, in front of a blind person, do not put a stumbling block. So therefore, he comes and he says, in order that people should not have a stumbling block, that they're going to be tameh, and they're going to be eating trumot or masot and all these things, and it's going to be a problem. So therefore, Lifnei vel. Rav Papa Amar, Rav Papa says, the remez is another pasuk. Amar solu panu darech. You have to make a tziyun, right, in order to lefanot at the derech, in order to empty out the streets, right, from the people which are ochlet truma v'tarot. So therefore, that's another pasuk of solu, right? Make that the paths are clear, right? Panu darech, in order to make the path clear. Rav Chinana says, harimu mishol miderech ami. Take away the michshol from my nation, right? That's why there's a pasuk of velamu mishol. Yoshua bered Ravidi Amar. Yoshua bered Ravidi says another pasuk. For the time at the derech you have to teach them the path which they have to go on, right? So again, the path, which means the path, so that way people are going to go there when they have trumot masrot, and they're not going to be eating. They're not going to be eating trumot masrot with tum'ah. Or zutra mar vizartem bnei Yisrael mitumatam. You have to separate bnei Yisrael from their tumah. Ravashi says u'mishmartem mishmarti asu mishmeret mishmarti. Make a mishmeret for my mishmeret. Avinamar vesam derech arenu b'yesh elokim. If you're going to make a siman, in order that I should see the salvation of Hashem. So basically, these are all different psukim. Look how many different psukim trying to hint us that a person is obligated to come, and he's obligated to, right? He's obligated to come, he's obligated to do atziyun for the kevarim. Right? The last pasuk, Amar Rav Yeshua Levi, Kol Hasham Chotav, Zochev Roeh B'Shioto Shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. On this last pasuk, there's another dirasha. Right? What was it? The other drasha is anybody that's going to evaluate their paths, he's going to be zochet to see the salvation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shnemar, v'sam derech. Al tikre v'sam, right? Ella v'sham derech. Sam is the place, the path. Sham is lashon shuma, to evaluate, right? To do self-evaluation, to do self-introspect. Arenu v'yasha Elokim, he will see the salvation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right now, to do with this last one, it says, Rabbi Yanai v'lehu talmida. Rabbi Yanai had a talmid, techol yom hava makshile, right, that he used to asking questions every single time in the shiur. So imagine there was somebody that was always speaking during the shiur, always asking questions during the shiur, right, looking at the phone during the shiur. And then what happens is, the Shabbatah deriglan, Shabbat regel, lo v'makshele, he wouldn't ask him a question, right? Why? Because he didn't want to ask a question, and maybe Rabbi Yanai would not know how to answer. So therefore, he purposely didn't want to start asking him a question in front of everybody. So Kari Alei, so he went. Rabbi Yanai called on this student, Hey Amud Bet, 5b, right? The Sham Derech, Arenu V'Yesh Elokim, which means that since he was thinking when to ask the question, meaning if you're going to be in a private place, you want to ask a million questions. But it's going to be in front of a shiur, and also you're going to start asking, and you're going to stump the rabbi. You know, some people, they purposely want to do that. So they're out for the kill, right? I see that all the time for the Kriyat Torah. People are trigger happy. They're all with the guns already. The second the Baal Koreh makes a mistake, you have a parnas right there. Right? If the parnas is a good parnas, he knows how to correct. No, you have 25 people correcting, just in case he didn't hear, you have to do it again. So you have to jump in. No. Right? The funniest though is when they themselves they're making the mistake because they don't know enough tikduk, so they come, they make a mistake. You know, I just start laughing, but it doesn't matter, right? But the concept though is that they're trigger happy. They're looking forward to it. Fine. Next. Okay. Says the Gemara Tanu Rabbanan, we learned to the Braita, en metzaynin lo ala kazait min hamet velo al etzem kesora velo al kol davar she'enu metameh beohel. They're not going to make any type of a tziyun, any type of a sign, not on a kazait basar of a met, right? That means there's only a kazait of the flesh of the met, or etzem kesora, or a bone like a barley, right? Velo al kol davar she'enu metameh beohel, anything which is not metameh beohel. Metzaynin shidra, they're going to do it on the spinal cord, but gulgolet and on the skull. And the majority of the spinal cord and the bones of a met. The end metzainin, and they're not going to do the tziyun al vadaot, right? Which means on a place that they know for sure that, like for a bet akvarot, you don't have to do a tziyun on a bet akvarot. You know that it's all tameh. Aval metzainin asfekot, only on things which are safek. Ve'elu en asfekot sechachot u'praot u'bet pras. Sechachot, praot, and bet pras. So it says over here that sechachot u'praot are places which they have an ohel, and they're right beside the Reshut Rabim, and it's right beside the Bet HaKvarot. So since it has an ohel, you have a question, is there tumah there or not? Right? What was maybe some people, they dig there and they start burying people there, right? But sinah. So therefore, because of that, you have to be mitzayin on them. And the same thing on the Bet HaPras is a safek. It's a field that they have somebody buried there, and they don't know exactly what happened. So which means they don't know exactly if it's there or not there, where is it? So they come and they have to do it. That means they have to do it on places where they have a safek. On places of a vadai, you don't have to do it. Meaning, I don't have to come and tell a Kohen, by the way, be careful of the Bet HaKvarot. Like, duh, like it's obvious, right? You know that. Where is it, right? It's another thing. You understand? So that's what you have to know. You're also not going to put a tziyun in a place of tuma mamash in order not to lose the tarot, which means like this. If you're going to put it mamash where the tuma is, by the time you get to it, it's already too late. So therefore, you have to do it before. It's like, for example, a person, the person's car breaks down. He's not going to put the, that triangle right there. Because by the time they get to him, boom, it's already too late. You have to put it further back. Because once they put it further back, then they're able to do that. Okay? They're not going to distance also the tziyun too much in order not to lose. Because imagine right now, you're going to distance it too much. So now all of Eretz Yisrael is going to be a place of tumah. Why? Over here there was a met, so they're going to put it from there. It's too far away. What the entire? So therefore, you don't do it too far or not too close. Ask the Gemara 1 second. What did we just say in the Braita? We said in the Braita that we're not going to put a tziyun on a kazait min hamet. It says what? Kazait min hamet is not mitamim be'oil. Today we learned in a Mishnah, right? There's a Mishnah now. Elo mitamim be'oil. Kazait min hamet. Kazait min hamet is mitamim be'oil. So why wouldn't you put a tziyun on a kazait? 28 grams. Mamash, do you know what 28 grams is? Nothing. 28 grams of a met, right?
There's no flesh at all anymore.
So again, one more time. We just said kazait min hamet is not going to be mitamim be'oil. We learned that it is mitamim be'oil. Rav Papa says, hacha bekazait mitzumtzam askinan. Here we're talking about a kazait mitzumtzam. Right? That's exactly kazait. The sof was at the end of the day mixed with machasar. It continues losing a little bit. Mitzumtzam, exact. Right? It's tamtzim, is exact. So he says, so every single time it's going to be lacking a little bit and a little bit. So then you don't have a kazait anymore. And it's still better to burn truma and kochim, even for that time until it becomes chaser, that you shouldn't burn it forever. Because if you're going to come and you're going to start being mitzayen on truma, so then forever you're going to start burning trumot and masrot, and it wasn't true because afterwards it wasn't going to be a kazait, because it's going to be lacking. Fine, next. These are the sfekot. Sechachot ufraot. Sechachot is ilana mesach la'aretz, it's a tree which is on the ground. Peraot are avanim pruot, right? Yotzot min hagader, which are like stones, big stones, which are coming out from a gader, from a fence. Beta pras kedetran, and we learned in the Mishnah. Lo tachresh et kever areu useh beta pras. If a person comes and he does charisha to a field, and there was a kever there, so there was a body there, and he went and he plowed the entire field. So he made the entire field with beta pras. Why? Because what? No, but he came and they plowed it. They did it. So now the entire place now it becomes a beta pras. The kama will say beta pras melo ma'aneh me'ama, right? Like one telem for 100 amot. So 100 amot around the kever, it's a beta pras. So says the Gemara, beta pras mitameh be'oil. Is beta pras mitameh be'oil? Rav Yehuda Meshmuel says Yehuda Meshmuel, minapeach adam beta pras. He could blow the beta pras ve'olech, and he could go in it, which means he could start blowing, right? He's walking through the entire field, and there's no problem. Rav Yehuda Amar Barami and Mishmedu Lamar beta pras shenidash taor. If you're going to be trampled upon, so it's going to become tahor. What does that mean? You're allowed to go through it. Why? Because they probably crushed the bones and there's nothing left. So therefore, there's no problem, right? So it says the Gemara, it's not a question. One of them is a place where they lost the kever, and one was a place shenichrash ba'kever. If they just lost the kever, so then you're allowed to come and blow and to go through the entire thing. But if it was nechrash, it was plowed, so then the entire thing, right, becomes. So that he says here, it's not nishar any shiur of tum'ah, and therefore you're allowed to go. Sorry, the opposite. I made the mistake. The opposite. If it was nechrash, so if it was plowed, so they probably they crushed it, and therefore you're allowed to blow it and continue going through the entire field. But if it was you just don't know where it is, but it wasn't plowed, there is a kever there, but you just don't know where it is, you're not allowed to go there at all because it's going to be a problem. So the Gemara says, "V'sadesh nevad ba'ab kever," that's called a beta pras. It's still called a beta pras. And so the Gemara, it is called a beta pras. But as we learned in the Mishnah, shlosha suge beta pras, and there's 3 types of beta pras. Sadesh nevad ba'ab kever, right? He's checking up which what is beta pras. Yeah, so he says a field that was lost the kever, a field that was nechrash ba'kever, which means that it was plowed, uste bochin, and sede bochin. What is sede bochin? My sede bochin. Yeshua Baraba Mishmedu Lamar. Yeshua Baraba, in the name of Ula, says sadeh shemaftirim ba hametim. It's a sadeh that they are nifradim in hametim, which means when they bring the met from one place to another place, they get to the field right beside the city. There, they're niftarim imenu, right? And and they go back. So therefore, there they come and they start washing them, and then they bury them. So it's called sdibuchim, a field of crying. It's like the funeral homes. It's like like the chapels. Okay, the tamamai. So why is that called betapras? Why is it called betapras? Avini says mishum yush balim naguba. The Chachamim we're talking about is maybe the met is going to come from a far away place, and one of his evarim are going to fall there, and one of them they're going to come and they're going to say that no, they're going to forget about it, and they're just going to leave it there, which means that sometimes a memory and sometimes a part of the body will just fall apart, and they'll just they'll do it there, and that's it. They'll just bury it there. So says the Gemara, you're going to tell me that a field that was plowed, right? A kever was plowed there. That means they plowed the body that was there. It doesn't need a tziyun. But Tanya, we learned on the right. If you find that the field has a tziyun, and you don't know why the tziyun is there, if it has trees, you know that a kever was plowed there. If there's no trees, so then obviously it was lost, a kever there. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda says, unless you're going to have a zaken or a tamid chacham, right? But the other people are not going to be believed. Why? Because they're not baki, which means that you see from here, there's a stirat to Rav Papa, because Rav Papa said that tzadeh shenachrash ba'kever is not mitame be'ohel, and here it's saying, and therefore, right, it says, right, that you don't need to do a tziyun. Here it is going to be mitame, and therefore you do need a tziyun. So Rav Papa is going to answer you, kitanya hi, besadeh shava ba'kever de tziyunuha, right, that they went and they did do a tziyun. Im yesh ba'ilanot, if it has trees, so then you know that it was nechrash ba'kever. If it doesn't have trees, so you know there was avad ba'kever. Avad means you lost it. That means there was a tomb here, tombstone, but you just don't know where it is, right? And the other one was nechrash, it was actually plowed. So says the Gemara, v'leichush dilma ilanot migavai v'kever mibarai. So why don't we suspect that the ilanot are going to be planted inside the field, in the inner part, and the kever is on the outside, and it wasn't actually plowed. Okay, so says the Gemara, kedamanula, like Ula says, be'omdim ala gvulin, which means the ilanot are on the gvul with the reshut rabim. So achenami, so to here we're talking about be'omdim ala gvulin of the sadeh of the reshut rabim. Therefore, for sure, the met was not outside of the trees because that's already the reshut rabim, right? But you don't bury the met in the reshut rabim. It's not kavod. You're not going to start burying a person mamash on the street, right? But rather nikvar ben ilanot. He's going to be buried between the trees. Umekomon nechrash letzorkam. And the place is going to be plowed for them, right? So therefore, because of that, it's going to be on the outside, on the inside, okay? So the Gemara is going to ask, and we continue B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow.